The stars looked cold and distant from the bridge of the hunting ship Voidstalker. Vexithari pressed his scaled hand against the viewing panel and studied the blue-green planet below. His yellow eyes narrowed as he read the data streaming across his screen. Another death world, he muttered in his native tongue. The translator device around his neck turned his words into standard galactic. Why do the best contracts always come from the worst places? Behind him, his team prepared their equipment. Kiltok clicked his mandibles as he checked the paralysis weapons. The spider-like alien had 8 arms working at once, each one handling a different piece of gear. His black eyes reflected the ship's lights as he spoke. The pay is good because the work is dangerous, Kiltok said. His voice sounded like glass breaking. 5 million credits for 6 specimens. That's more than we made in the last 3 hunts. Myrmex grunted from his corner. The massive warrior stood 9 feet tall and wore thick armor that covered his gray skin. His people, the Kreldon, were known throughout the galaxy as fierce fighters. But even Myrmex looked worried as he studied the planet data. The gravity is too strong, Myrmex said. His voice was deep like thunder. And the atmosphere burns with poison gas. How do creatures live in this place? Zisara floated near the ceiling, her body glowing with soft purple light. The Etherian had no solid form, just energy contained in a shimmering outline. When she spoke, her voice echoed inside everyone's mind. The locals call it oxygen, she said without moving her mouth. Their bodies need it to live. But it would kill most other species in minutes. Vexithari turned back to his screen. He had been hunting dangerous creatures for over 20 years. The Galactic Tracking Guild paid him well because he always brought back what they wanted. Rare animals, exotic plants, and sometimes intelligent species for the research labs. This job was different. The client wanted live specimens from Earth, a planet that had just been discovered by a deep space probe. The humans who lived there looked weak and small compared to most galactic species. They had no scales, no claws, no natural armor, but they lived on a world that would kill most aliens just by breathing the air. Look at these readings, Vexithari said, pointing at his screen. The planet has deadly storms, poisonous creatures, and natural disasters that happen every day. The temperature changes from freezing cold to burning hot. There are diseases that can kill in hours. He scrolled through more data. The humans fight wars with weapons that use controlled explosions. They eat food that would be poison to us. They drink water that has chemicals in it. Kiltok finished checking his weapons and moved closer. But they look so fragile. No natural weapons. Soft skin, weak bodies. How do they survive? Perhaps they are tougher than they appear, Zisara suggested. Many species look harmless but have hidden strengths. Myrmex laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. Tough? They weigh less than a Kreldan child. I could break one with my bare hands. Vexithari studied the images of humans on his screen. The probe had taken pictures of a small town in what the humans called Korea. He could see the creatures walking around, doing normal activities. They looked peaceful and harmless. The client wants 6 specimens, Vexithari said. Adult humans in good health. They're paying extra because they want them captured during what the humans call recreational activities. What does that mean? Myrmex asked. Vexithari checked his notes. Activities they do for fun, games, sports, entertainment. The client thinks it will be easier to catch them when they're distracted. The ship's computer beeped. They were now in orbit around Earth. Through the viewing panel, they could see the planet's surface. It looked beautiful from space with blue oceans and white clouds. But Vexithari knew that beauty hid deadly secrets. Sensors show a group of humans in the target area, Kiltok reported. They appear to be engaged in recreational activities near a mountain range. On the screen, they could see thermal images of 4 humans. 2 males and 2 females, all young adults. They were moving around in an area with steep cliffs and dense forest. Perfect, Vexithari said. Isolated targets away from the main population. We can take them quickly and leave before anyone notices. He turned to address his team. Remember, we need them alive and undamaged. The paralysis weapons will stop them without causing harm. Once they're unconscious, we load them into the cargo hold and leave. It seems too easy, Zisara said. Her glowing form pulsed with uncertainty. Why would the client pay so much for such a simple job? Because it's a death world, Vexithari replied. The environment is dangerous even if the locals aren't. We'll be in and out before the planet can kill us. Myrmex strapped on his weapon belt. How long will we be on the surface? No more than 2 hours, Vexithari said. We drop down, grab the specimens, and return to orbit. Quick and clean. The ship began its descent toward Earth's surface. As they entered the atmosphere, Vexthari felt the familiar excitement of a hunt beginning. In a few hours they would be rich. The humans below had no idea what was coming. Through the viewing panel he could see the mountain town getting larger. The humans were still there, moving around their recreational area. They looked so small and helpless from above. "Prepare for landing," Vexthari announced. "Remember, stay alert. Deathworlds are dangerous even when the locals aren't." But as the ship touched down in a clearing near the human settlement, none of the aliens realized they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. They thought they were the hunters. They were about to learn they were wrong. The morning air was cool in the mountains near the small town of Pine Ridge. Kim Suman checked her climbing gear one more time before starting up the rock face. The 22-year-old college student had been climbing since she was 10 years old. These cliffs were like old friends to her. She looked down at her boyfriend Kang Minho, who was setting up his base jumping equipment nearby. The 28-year-old former soldier grinned up at her. "Don't fall, Suman," he called out. "I'm not finished setting up my parachute." "Don't worry about me," she laughed back. "Worry about yourself. That jump looks crazy even for you." Park Ji-woo walked out of the forest carrying her survival pack. The 26-year-old wilderness expert had been checking animal tracks since dawn. She waved at both of them. "The weather's perfect for outdoor activities," she said. "No storms coming for at least 2 days." Lee Dong-yun drove up in his sheriff's truck just as Ji-woo finished speaking. The 35-year-old veteran got out and stretched his back. He was off duty today, but he still wore his badge out of habit. "You kids picked a good day for your extreme sports," he said with a smile. "Just try not to break any bones. The nearest hospital is 2 hours away." Suman was already 20 feet up the cliff face when she noticed something strange. A metallic glint caught her eye from the forest above. She paused and looked closer. Something was moving in the trees that didn't belong there. "Hey guys," she called down. "Do we have any hunters in the area today?" Dong-hyun frowned. "Not that I know of. Hunting season doesn't start for another month." "Why?" "I think I see something in the trees up there. Looks like metal or glass reflecting sunlight." In the forest, Vexthari watched the humans through his scope. They were perfect specimens. Young, healthy, and completely unaware of danger. He signaled to his team with hand gestures. Kiltak was already in position above the cliff, his web-shooting organs ready. Myrmex waited in the heavy brush, his paralysis rifle charged. Cisara floated invisibly among the trees, watching for any other humans who might interfere. "The female on the cliff is isolated," Cisara's voice whispered in their minds. She would be easy to take first. Vexthari nodded. They would start with the climber, then move on to the others. He aimed his paralysis weapon at Suman and fired. The energy beam hit Suman in the back just as she reached for her next handhold. She felt a strange tingling sensation spread through her body. Her muscles became weak and heavy. But instead of falling, she did something that shocked the watching aliens. She laughed. "Whoa," she said, shaking her head. "That was weird. Must have been static electricity from the rock." The paralysis beam that should have knocked her unconscious had barely slowed her down. Suman continued climbing, though she moved more carefully now. Vexthari stared in disbelief. "Impossible. That beam should have dropped a creature twice her size." He fired again, this time with maximum power. The beam hit Suman directly in the chest. She stumbled and nearly lost her grip, but she didn't fall. "Okay, that's definitely not static," she muttered. She looked around and spotted movement in the trees above. "Hey, who's up there?" That's when she saw Kiltak. The spider-like alien was hanging from a tree branch, all 8 arms visible and his black eyes gleaming. For a moment, human and alien stared at each other in surprise. Then Suman did something that terrified Kiltak. She smiled. "Well, that's new," she said calmly. She reached for the climbing axe on her belt. "You're not from around here, are you?" Kiltak fired his web at her, intending to wrap her up like prey. But Suman was ready. She swung her axe and cut through the sticky strands before they could pin her arms. Then she did something even more frightening. She started climbing toward him. "Suman," Mio shouted from below. "What's wrong?" "We've got visitors," she called back, still moving up the cliff with impossible speed. "And they're not friendly." Kiltak panicked. The human female was climbing straight up a vertical rock face like it was a ladder. She was carrying a sharp weapon and didn't look scared at all. If anything, she looked excited. He tried to retreat, but Suman was faster than he expected. She reached the top of the cliff and rolled onto solid ground just as Kiltak tried to scuttle away. "Oh no, you don't," she said, grabbing one of his legs. You shot me with something, didn't you? Kiltuck made a sound like breaking glass as Suman's grip tightened. Her small hand was incredibly strong. He tried to shake her off, but she held on and swung her axe at another one of his legs. Down below, the other humans heard the commotion and sprang into action. Minho abandoned his base jumping setup and started climbing the cliff with his bare hands. Jiwoo melted into the forest like a ghost, moving toward the sounds of fighting. Dongyun drew his service pistol and started looking for threats. Myrmex charged out of the bushes, intending to help Kiltuck. The massive warrior expected to scatter the weak humans with his presence. Instead, he found himself facing Dongyun's pistol. "Police! Drop your weapons!" Dongyun shouted in a voice trained to command authority. Myrmex had faced armed opponents before, but there was something different about this human. The small creature stood perfectly calm, his weapon steady, his eyes cold and calculating. Myrmex realized he was looking at a predator. The Kreldan warrior fired his paralysis rifle. The beam hit Dongyun's center mass and should have dropped him instantly. Instead, the human just staggered slightly and kept his gun aimed at Myrmex's head. "That tickled," Dongyun said. "Now drop the weapon or I'll show you how human weapons work." Myrmex couldn't believe what he was seeing. The paralysis beam that could stop a charging battle beast had barely affected this small human. And the creature was still pointing a projectile weapon at him with rock-steady hands. Above them, Suman had managed to tie up 2 of Kiltuck's legs with her climbing rope. The alien was making horrible noises and trying to bite her, but she stayed just out of reach of his mandibles. "Jiwoo," she called out. "I caught one. But there are more around here somewhere." Jiwoo's voice came from the forest, calm and professional. "I see 2 more heat signatures moving toward your position. One's about 50 meters to your left. The other is trying to circle around behind Dongyun." Minho reached the top of the cliff just in time to see Suman dragging a struggling 8-legged alien toward a tree. He blinked twice to make sure he wasn't hallucinating. "Suman, what the hell is that thing?" "Alien spider monster," she replied cheerfully, as if this happened every day. "It shot me with some kind of stun gun. Didn't work very well." She looked down at Chiltak, who was making terrified clicking sounds. "You picked the wrong planet to hunt on, buddy." In the forest, Vexthari watched his carefully planned ambush fall apart. The humans weren't running in terror. They weren't even particularly surprised. They were treating his elite hunting team like a minor inconvenience. And worst of all, they were winning. Vexthari crouched behind a fallen tree and tried to understand what had gone wrong. His team was supposed to be the best in the galaxy. They had captured dangerous creatures from dozens of worlds, but these humans were different. Kiltak's panicked clicks echoed through the forest. The spider alien was tied to a tree with his own webbing, courtesy of the human female. Myrmex was pinned down by the human with the projectile weapon, unable to move without getting shot. "We need to retreat," Zisara's voice whispered in his mind. The floating alien was hidden in the canopy above, watching everything unfold. "These creatures are not what they appear to be." "No," Vexthari hissed. "We're professional hunters. We don't run from prey animals." But even as he said it, he could see that something was terribly wrong. The humans weren't acting like prey. They were coordinating their movements like pack hunters, and they seemed to be enjoying themselves. Minho stood at the edge of the cliff, looking down at his friends below. The former soldier's training kicked in as he assessed the tactical situation. Multiple hostile contacts, unknown weapons, team members under threat. "Time to respond. Jiwoo, what's your position?" he called out. "Northwest of your location, about 30 meters, came her voice from the trees. "I can see 2 more bogies trying to flank us. One's behind the big rock formation, the other is moving through the thick brush. Dongyun, how are you doing down there?" The sheriff kept his gun trained on Myrmex while responding. "Got one big ugly pinned down. Looks like he's wearing some kind of battle armor. His weapon doesn't seem to work very well on humans." Suman finished securing Kiltak and picked up the alien's dropped paralysis rifle. She examined it with the curiosity of someone who enjoyed figuring out how things worked. "This is interesting tech," she said. "Looks like it fires some kind of energy beam. Mind if I try it out?" She pointed the weapon at a nearby tree and pulled what looked like a trigger. A blue beam shot out and hit the trunk, causing the wood to smoke and char. "Cool," she said with genuine enthusiasm. "It's like a sci-fi movie." Vexthari couldn't believe what he was hearing. The human had just figured out how to use advanced alien technology in less than a minute, and she was treating it like a toy. He decided to try a different approach. Moving carefully through the underbrush, he worked his way toward the human settlement. Maybe he could take hostages and force the others to surrender, but Jiwoo was already tracking his movements. The wilderness expert had grown up in these mountains. She could read sign that most people couldn't even see. Broken twigs, disturbed leaves, the faint scent of alien technology. It all told a story. She moved through the forest like a shadow, staying downwind and using the terrain to mask her approach. 26 years of hiking, camping, and surviving in the wilderness had taught her patience and stealth. Vexithari never saw her coming. Jiwoo appeared behind him like a ghost, pressing the blade of her survival knife against his scaled neck. The alien hunter froze in surprise and fear. "Drop your weapons," she said quietly. "Move slowly and don't try anything stupid." Vexithari had been ambushed by the prey. The shame of it burned through him like acid, but he had no choice. The human's blade was sharp against his throat, and her voice carried the quiet confidence of someone who knew how to kill. He dropped his paralysis rifle and raised his hands. "Good," Jiwoo said. "Now we're going to walk back to my friends, and you're going to tell us why you're here." As they emerged from the forest, Minho was rappelling down the cliff face with military efficiency. He had found some climbing rope in Suman's gear and was using it to reach the ground quickly. "Nice work, Jiwoo," he called out as he landed. "How many more are there?" "At least one more," she replied, keeping her knife ready. "This one seems to be the leader." Dongyun glanced at their new prisoner while keeping his gun aimed at Myrmex. "Well, this is officially the weirdest day of my career. Alien hunters in my jurisdiction." Suman climbed down from her position and walked over to examine Vexithari. The reptilian alien was taller than her, with scales that shifted color in the sunlight. His yellow eyes watched her with a mixture of fear and confusion. "So you're the boss," she said. "Your team needs better training. That paralysis gun barely slowed me down." She held up the weapon she had taken from Kiltak. "Mind if I keep this? Consider it payment for trying to kidnap me." Vexithari stared at her in shock. This small human female had defeated one of his hunters, stolen his weapon, and was now asking permission to keep it like she was discussing a souvenir from a gift shop. "The remaining hostile is moving toward the road," Zisara's voice whispered in his mind. "I believe it's trying to reach our ship." Minho caught the direction of Vexithari's eyes and smiled. "Your friend is heading for your ride, isn't she?" "Jiwoo, can you track the last one?" "Already on it," Jiwoo replied. "But we should move fast. If they have a ship, they might try to call for backup." Dongyun made a decision. "Minho, you and Suman stay here and watch these two. Jiwoo and I will go after the runner. Try not to let our guests escape." "No problem," Suman said cheerfully. She had found Myrmex's dropped paralysis rifle and was examining it with interest. "I want to see how their technology works anyway." Minho picked up a third alien weapon and checked it over with professional efficiency. The former soldier's training told him these were advanced energy weapons, far beyond Earth's technology. But they seemed to have a critical flaw. They were designed for use against normal galactic species, not humans. "You know what I find interesting?" he said to Vexithari. "Your weapons don't work very well on us. That suggests you didn't do your research before coming here." Vexithari said nothing, but his color changed to a darker shade of green. Fear, Minho realized. The alien was afraid. "Relax," Minho continued. "We're not going to hurt you unless you try something stupid. But I'm curious about why you're here." Suman had figured out how to adjust the power settings on her captured weapon. She was testing different levels on rocks and trees, making notes about the effects. "This is fascinating," she said. "The beam intensity is variable, and it looks like it affects different materials in different ways. I bet I could reverse engineer the power source." She looked at Kiltak, who was still tied to the tree. "Your friend here got the full power setting, didn't he? No wonder he's not moving around much." The spider alien made a whimpering sound that his translator couldn't process. Meanwhile, Dongyun and Jiwoo were closing in on Zisara. The floating alien was fast, but she wasn't used to Earth's heavy gravity or the rough terrain. She kept having to stop and rest, which made her easy to track. "There," Jiwoo whispered, pointing through the trees. "See that purple glow? She's trying to hide behind that boulder." Dongyun nodded and circled around to the other side while Jiwoo approached directly. It was a standard pincer movement, something both humans had practiced in their respective careers. When they closed the trap, Zisara realized she was surrounded. The Etherian tried to flee straight up, but Dongyun was ready. He fired 3 shots from his pistol, the bullets passing harmlessly through her energy form but disrupting her control enough to bring her crashing down. Interesting, he said. Physical projectiles affect your cohesion. Good to know. Back at the cliff, Vexthari watched his last team member get captured with growing despair. These humans had systematically defeated his entire hunting party, using nothing but primitive weapons and basic tactics. But what terrified him most was their attitude. They weren't angry or frightened. They were curious and excited, like children who had found new toys to play with, and they were already starting to figure out how the alien technology worked. Word spread quickly through the small mountain town. Within 2 hours, half the population had gathered at the cliff site to see the captured aliens. But these weren't ordinary sightseers coming to gawk at something strange. Choi Hyuk arrived first, driving his old pickup truck loaded with tools and equipment. The 30-year-old demolitions expert worked for the local mining company, but his real passion was figuring out how things exploded. When he heard about alien technology, his eyes lit up like a kid's on Christmas morning. "Are those really energy weapons?" he asked, examining one of the paralysis rifles. "How do they generate the beam? Is it plasma-based or some kind of particle accelerator?" Song Aryam showed up next, still wearing her martial arts training clothes. The 24-year-old had been practicing at her dojo when she got the call. She looked at the captured aliens with professional interest. They moved differently than humans, she observed, watching Kiltak struggle against his restraints. The big armored one has a high center of gravity. The spider thing relies on multiple limbs for balance. I bet I could take them in a fair fight. Nam Taeyang was the last to arrive, but he made the biggest entrance. The 29-year-old pilot buzzed the gathering in his small plane, waggling his wings before landing in a nearby field. He jogged over with a huge grin on his face. "Please tell me they have a spaceship," he said breathlessly. "I've been dreaming of flying something like that since I was 10 years old." Vexthari listened to the humans talking and felt his heart sink. These creatures weren't just curious about the technology. They were actively planning to study it, reverse engineer it, and improve upon it. And they seemed to think it would be fun. "Where's your ship?" Minho asked in a conversational tone. "We found tracks leading away from here, but they disappear about a mile out." The reptilian alien said nothing, but his scales shifted to a pale yellow color. "He's scared," Jiwoo noted. "That color change is probably a stress response." Suman had spent the last hour taking apart one of the paralysis rifles with tools borrowed from Hyuk's truck. She had the weapon completely disassembled and was studying each component with fascination. "This power cell is incredible," she said. "It's storing more energy than our best batteries, but it weighs almost nothing. And look at this focusing array. It's using some kind of crystal matrix to shape the beam." She held up a small glowing component. "I think this is the key piece. It converts stored energy into directed particles. If I could figure out how to replicate this..." Hyuk leaned over her shoulder, equally excited. "We could revolutionize mining operations. Imagine being able to cut through solid rock with a handheld device. Or building construction," Taeyang added. "Precision cutting, welding, all kinds of applications." The aliens watched in horror as the humans casually discussed turning their advanced weapons into industrial tools. What had taken their species millennia to develop, these creatures were already planning to mass produce. Aryam had been studying Myrmex's fighting stance and armor configuration. The massive Kreldan warrior was still frozen by the paralysis beam, but his eyes tracked her movements with growing unease. "Your armor is designed for frontal assaults," she said to him. "Heavy protection on the chest and shoulders, but the joints are exposed. Classic warrior mindset. You expect your enemies to face you directly." She walked around him in a slow circle, pointing out weaknesses. "Humans don't fight that way. We're ambush predators. We go for the weak spots." Myrmex tried to speak, but the paralysis beam had affected his vocal cords. All he could do was watch as this small human female analyzed his combat gear like she was planning his defeat. Dongyun had been questioning Zisara about their mission. The Etherean's translator was working, but her answers were evasive and frightened. "You're hunters," he said. "You came here to capture humans for some kind of client. What were you planning to do with us? We were told you were primitive creatures," Zisara replied, her purple glow flickering with distress. "The contract said you had no advanced technology or weapons." "Who hired you?" Jiwoo asked. "The Galactic Tracking Guild. They supply specimens to research facilities and entertainment venues." A cold silence fell over the gathered humans. Entertainment venues. The aliens had come to capture people for some kind of galactic zoo or circus. Well, that's not happening, Minho said in a voice that made the aliens shiver. But I think we need to have a longer conversation about this galactic guild of yours. Taeyang had been using a metal detector to search the area where the alien tracks disappeared. After 20 minutes of careful searching, he found what he was looking for. Got it, he called out. There's something big buried under about 3 feet of dirt and leaves. Definitely metallic, and it's giving off some kind of electromagnetic signature. Hyuk grabbed his shovel from the truck. Let's dig it up. Wait, Suman said, holding up a hand. If it's their ship, it might have security systems. Let me see if I can figure out how to disarm them first. She had reassembled the paralysis rifle and was now examining a small device she had taken from Vexithari's belt. The device looked like a communicator or control unit. This seems to be key to their biology, she said, studying the alien symbols on its surface. But the interface is pretty intuitive. I think this button activates cloaking systems. She pressed it, and suddenly a sleek spacecraft materialized in the clearing where Taeyang had been searching. The humans gathered around it with expressions of pure delight. It's beautiful, Taeyang breathed. Look at those lines. The hull design is perfect for atmospheric flight and space travel. The ship was about the size of a small bus, with a smooth metallic surface that reflected the sunlight. Strange symbols were etched along its sides, and what looked like weapon ports were visible near the front. How does the propulsion work? Hyuk asked, walking around the craft. I don't see any conventional engines. Probably some kind of gravity manipulation, Suman suggested. Or maybe they've figured out how to bend space-time. Ariam was more interested in the tactical implications. It's armed. See those ports? Definitely weapon systems, probably more powerful than anything we have on Earth. Donghyun approached the ship's entrance, which appeared to be a seamless section of hull with no visible door. How do we get inside? Suman held up the control device she had taken from Vexithari. I think this is the key. She pressed another button and a section of the hull slid open with a soft hiss. The interior of the ship was revealed. A cramped but efficient space filled with alien technology. Taeyang let out a whoop of joy and started toward the entrance. I call dibs on the pilot's seat. Wait, Minho said, but he was grinning too. We should probably make sure it's safe first. Come on, Taeyang replied. How dangerous could it be? As the humans began exploring their new toy, the captured aliens could only watch in growing terror. These creatures had not only defeated them in combat, they were treating the entire situation as an entertaining challenge. And worst of all, they were learning. Every piece of technology they examined, every system they figured out, every weakness they discovered, it all became part of their growing understanding of galactic civilization. Vexithari realized with growing horror that his team hadn't just failed to capture specimens. They had given these apex predators access to technology that could change the balance of power in the galaxy, and the humans seemed to think it was the most fun they'd had in years. The sun was setting over the mountains when Taeyang finally figured out how to start the alien ship. The engine hummed to life with a sound like singing crystals, and the craft lifted smoothly off the ground. This is incredible, he shouted over the radio as he took the ship on its first test flight. The controls are so responsive, and the view from up here is amazing. Down on the ground, the other humans watched their friend perform barrel rolls and loop-de-loops in technology that had taken the aliens centuries to develop. Vexithari could only stare in disbelief as his escape route became a human toy. He's a natural pilot, Hyuk observed, shading his eyes to watch the ship dance through the sky. Think he could teach the rest of us how to fly it? Probably, Suman replied. She had spent the afternoon reverse engineering the alien technology, and now had 3 paralysis rifles completely disassembled on a makeshift workbench. The interface seems designed to be user-friendly, almost like they expected different species to use it. Ariam had been practicing combat techniques with the captured alien weapons. She had figured out how to adjust the power levels and was using them for target practice on old tin cans. These would be perfect for non-lethal law enforcement, she said, firing another precise shot. Stun settings for crowd control. Higher settings for stopping vehicles. Much more versatile than our current options. Minho and Jiwoo had been interrogating the captured aliens more thoroughly. What they learned made them both excited and concerned. So there's an entire galactic civilization out there, Minho said. Hundreds of species, trade networks, technology exchanges, and they think humans are primitive. That could work in our favor, Jiwoo pointed out. If they underestimate us, we have an advantage. Donghyun had been taking detailed notes about everything the aliens told them. As sheriff, he was thinking about the legal implications of first contact with an alien species. "We need to report this to higher authorities," he said. "This is way above my pay grade." "Maybe," Minho replied. "But let's make sure we understand what we're dealing with first." He turned to Vexthari, who had been watching the humans with growing despair. "Tell me about this Galactic Tracking Guild. How many hunters do they have? What kind of ships and weapons?" Vexthari's translator conveyed his reluctant answers. The guild was one of the largest organizations in known space, with thousands of hunters and a fleet of ships. They specialized in capturing rare creatures from dangerous worlds. "And they sent just the 4 of you to capture humans?" Suman asked. "That seems like poor planning." "We were told you were non-threatening," Zisara interjected, her purple glow dim with shame. "The initial surveys showed a species with no natural weapons, no advanced technology, and fragile physiology." "Well, the surveys were wrong," Orium said cheerfully. "We're actually pretty good at the whole survival thing." Hayek had been examining the ship's weapon systems while Taeyang flew around above them. The demolitions expert was fascinated by the power output and targeting capabilities. "These guns could level a city block," he reported. "The energy output is off the charts, but the targeting system is designed for use against slow-moving targets with predictable flight patterns. Military vessels from other species," Minho translated. "They're used to fighting opponents who use conventional tactics." "That won't work against humans," Orium observed. "We're way too unpredictable." As the day wore on, more people from town arrived to see the aliens and their technology. But instead of panic or fear, the humans showed curiosity and excitement. Children asked if they could pet the spider alien. Teenagers wanted to know if the energy weapons could be used for light shows. Adults discussed the economic implications of alien technology. The captured aliens watched this response with growing terror. These creatures weren't just dangerous. They were insanely optimistic about their ability to handle any situation. "You know what I find really interesting?" Suman said as she reassembled one of the paralysis rifles with several improvements of her own design. "Your weapons were designed to be non-lethal. You weren't planning to kill us." She looked at Vexthari with genuine curiosity. "Why not? Most predators kill their prey." Vexithari's scales shifted to a pale green color. "Dead specimens are worth less than live ones," he admitted. "The clients pay premium prices for healthy, undamaged creatures." "So you're not warriors," Donghyun said. "You're kidnappers." The implications of that statement hung in the air. These aliens hadn't come to Earth as conquerors or soldiers. They were criminals who captured sentient beings for profit. Minho's expression hardened. "How many other species have you done this to?" "Dozens," Zisara replied reluctantly, "but most are primitive species with limited intelligence. We've never encountered anything like humans before." "What makes us different?" Jiwoo asked. Kiltak, who had been silent for hours, finally spoke through his translator. His voice sounded like breaking glass mixed with static. "You treat everything as a game," he said. "Combat, technology, even capture. It's all entertainment to you. You have no concept of appropriate fear responses." Murmax, who was finally recovering some movement from the paralysis beam, nodded in agreement. "Your species thrives on challenges that would destroy others. You see danger and think fun. You're also terrifyingly adaptable," Vexthari added. "In one day, you've mastered technology that takes most species years to understand. And you're already improving on our designs." Taeyang's voice crackled over the radio as he brought the ship in for a landing. "Hey guys, I found something interesting up here. This ship has some kind of long-range communication array, and it looks like it's been transmitting data back to somewhere." He landed the ship smoothly and climbed out with a huge grin. "Flying that thing is like a dream come true. But we might have a problem. I think they've been reporting back to their bosses." Vexithari's scales turned almost white. The automatic systems had been sending updates to the guild throughout the mission. By now his handlers would know that something had gone wrong. "What kind of updates?" Minho asked. "Mission status reports," Vexthari admitted. "Location data, target information, estimated completion times. When we don't return on schedule, they'll send another team to investigate." The humans exchanged glances. Instead of looking worried, they looked excited. "More aliens?" Hyuk asked hopefully. "With different technology?" "Probably a larger ship," Suman added. "Maybe a rescue team with better equipment." "This could be our chance to make formal first contact," Donghyun said. "But on our terms, not theirs." Arium cracked her knuckles. "I'd like to test my skills against a larger group," See how their tactics work against prepared humans. Taiyang was practically bouncing with excitement. Do you think they'll bring more ships? I want to try flying something bigger. As the humans began planning their response to the inevitable rescue mission, the captured aliens could only listen in horror. These creatures weren't planning to hide or run away. They were looking forward to the next encounter like it was going to be the best entertainment they'd had in years. Vexthari managed to activate his emergency communicator with one claw while the humans were distracted. He sent out a desperate message on all guild frequencies. Code red emergency. Mission failed catastrophically. Recommend immediate species reclassification. Earth humans are Class X apex predators. Repeat, do not engage, they hunt for recreation. They adapt alien technology in hours. They show no appropriate fear responses. Requesting immediate evacuation. We are not prisoners here. We are toys. But as he finished the transmission, he realized that Suman had been watching him the entire time. The young human woman had a small smile on her face and was holding what looked like a recording device. Thanks for that, she said cheerfully. We were wondering how to contact your friends. Now we have their communication frequencies and protocols. She turned to the others. Who wants to send them an invitation to visit Earth? As the captured aliens watched the humans begin composing what they called a friendly greeting message to the Galactic Tracking Guild, Vexthari realized that his species had made a terrible mistake. They hadn't just failed to capture specimens from Earth. They had introduced the galaxy to humanity, and the humans were very excited to meet their new neighbors.